This has got to be a joke.
One of the things I think that John was very aware of, and I certainly also, was the fact that using the frame was very important as to how you would create the emotional reaction in the audience. To leave empty parts of the frame where evil could be lurking. How do you create an emotional reaction on the part of the audience using just composition? I became interested in cinematography very early on. I mean, I was interested in movies since I was a little kid in grammar school. So I wanted to go to film school, and in film school I studied cinematography. And originally I was thinking about being a production designer, doing the set designs and stuff, but at film school I changed my focus to cinematography. No pun intended. Well, actually it was. So when I got out of film school, I wanted to become a cinematographer and just worked on a lot of little jobs, doing almost anything I could, but always aiming towards cinematography by shooting the second or third camera or doing some inserts for some Roger Corman movie or whatever. So that was sort of my interest and desire was to always, ever since I was a kid, be a cinematographer. Deborah Hill had been a script supervisor on a couple of low-budget films that I've done. We did several of them together. I got a phone call from her one day. She said she and this new kind of guy, John Carpenter, were going to do a movie called Halloween. Was I interested in meeting John and seeing if I'd be interested in the project? And I said, of course, because even though I didn't know John, any project that sounded interesting to me was worthwhile. Halloween was a more sophisticated project right from the start. And I have to credit John Carpenter with being a great inspiration for that part of my career. I was always interested in visual storytelling. As a kid, I think I was aware of that as I watched movies. And with John, the fact that he was the best visual storyteller I'd worked with at that point, it gave me the incentive to really sort of follow what I wanted to do, which was be a visual storyteller also. The fact that we were very careful about composition, very aware of light and dark, and using the frame to compose and create dark areas and areas where evil Michael Myers could be lurking, was to me one of the great rewards out of working on Halloween. The Fog, being the next John Carpenter film I worked on, was a little more ambitious. Halloween had been set in a relatively small environment, but The Fog was all about expansive exteriors, which we shot up near San Francisco, and a lot of other aspects about it. And then, of course, the special effect of creating the fog itself that had to appear to have kind of a life to it. So it was a film that expanded on the visual storytelling. And I watched it recently and looked back fondly with the fact that there was so much sort of style that drove the film as opposed to, action and story. It was a spooky ghost story compared to an action slasher kind of movie. And it was really, I think, a lot of the fact that the style of the film came from the environment, the small town, the wind-swept cliffs and the lonely road, and all of that was really part of what created the mood and emotional response for the film. Escape from New York, I think, was what was probably the greatest challenge for me up to that point, because it was going to be creating a very unique environment. The art direction, the locations, everything, the lighting, the style of it, everything was going to have to develop a very particular look and a style. We had a couple of technical advances that we tried. Panavision, the camera company, had just made a new set of lenses that were faster. You could shoot with less light than you needed previously. And they had just developed the HMI light, which was a new way of producing light for our film lights that were more efficient, brighter, and had a really interesting bluish color. So in combining those two, it enabled us to light large areas of streets, blocks of streets at night. So the art direction, the environment, the set dressing, and the technical things, the lights and the fast lenses, allowed us to really sort of create a whole mood and environment that was key to the film. The fact that we could do a moving shot by just walking through the junk and walking through the environment really sort of was key, I think, to drawing the audience into the situation. We also wanted to create the sort of sense that you as the viewer were voyeuristically watching all of the stuff that happens. You were part of it. And I think the fact that the camera can move as a person and take the audience in that kind of a movement style was really valuable in creating the look and the feeling of Escape from New York. So I got a phone call one day that they said that they were making the sequel to Halloween, Halloween 2, and that I was part of that the part of the deal for getting it made was the fact that I would, carry on with the look and everything. It became evident that the second one had to sort of carry through the style and the look and everything of the first one. And we did our best. Halloween 1 was such an innovative sort of film that Halloween 2 sometimes gets overlooked because it's a continuation in theory. Halloween 3 was an interesting experiment in that rather than trying to make yet another sequel with Michael Myers somehow still on the loose and creating evil, they decided that maybe what should be done is the holiday of Halloween should become the theme. And the fact that it was a completely different story was probably confusing to people, although I think in its own way it was really an interesting film, and I enjoyed working on it. The Thing was probably for me the greatest challenge at that point in my career, because it was much larger in scope. Even though it seemed to be the story of some guys confined to an Antarctic research camp. In fact, we shot it in Alaska, we shot it in British Columbia, Canada. We shot it on stages at Universal. We refrigerated the stages and so that you could see the breath and it looked cold. There was a lot of scope and technique that went into the film. So it was a challenge because the white snow, on an overcast day, you could make out very little detail or shape to the snow. And so I used a technique where I would use a graduated neutral density filter on the lens. That is, part of the lens would look through a filter that was slightly dark. And what that did was, on the film, it would darken the foreground snow so that you could make it look a little more gray or bring out the details and textures. Rob Bottin's makeup creations for The Thing were really pretty spectacular and innovative for the time. But he was concerned that if you just lit things so it was obvious and rightly lit like the rest of the room, that you would see brush strokes and seams and all of this stuff, and it was too blatant. So he said, let's light with just little bits of light here and there to bring out the outline of this and the texture of this. And I immediately saw that, that was the key to creating, the sort of believability of these strange things he had created. So that became one of the great challenges, but also the fun things, was how to light these things with little splashes of light here and there, so that the creature, the makeup, had a sort of believability and a life of its own, and yet was still mysterious to the audience. So there was quite a bit of technique and thought that went into making The Thing, and it's always been one of those films I look back and say, well, it seemed effortless, but I remember freezing in the snow. Big Trouble in Little China was really a change of pace for both John and myself. It was colorful, a fantasy, set in a completely different kind of world than we were both used to dealing with. I think, as with any film, I sort of react to the locations, the set, the story, and I try to adapt what I do to best serve all of those things. You always have other people who are collaborating with you. The production designer who designs the sets and finds the locations, the director, of course, as to how he wants to tell the story and what story he wants to tell. So I find that I enjoy fitting into that puzzle rather than imposing anything on it. And the sets that John Lloyd had designed and built were so wonderful to work in. It was really just a matter of trying to find a way to make that fantasy enjoyable and yet somehow realistic. It had to be accessible to the audience, that here a poor truck driver was thrown into this environment and has to deal with all of this strange culture and everything. So it was a case of trying to make it look real and yet enhance the fantasy of it. And I think my work on some of my previous films really sort of helped out because once again, it was the ability to use the frame that John and I loved, the anamorphic widescreen frame, but to fill it with something different than dark lurking areas. So it was a lot of fun to do something that was a complete change of pace, especially with John, because he's so aware of the frame that if I had a suggestion, he would either understand completely why I was doing it or explain why he wanted to do something else. So it was a very fun collaboration to do Big Trouble in Little China. I think my work with John Carpenter has been some of my most satisfying, and even though it's early in my career, I look back with the fond remembrance of it being a great training and proving ground for me. The fact that Halloween was the first film that gave me credibility, but also showed me that it was possible to do interesting filmmaking and film storytelling, even though you may not have a big budget. That the reality of what goes on the screen can be enhanced by big budgets, as we see now with all these big, giant, epic films that are being made. But at the same time, you can also satisfy an audience and take them on a journey just using your own imagination of how to tell a story. And working with John was the confirmation of that. The fact that he was such an avid storyteller with the camera and was willing to give me the opportunity to enjoy and learn that with him. Yeah, I would work with John anytime, because he's one of those guys that sort of put me on the map, but also gave me the confirmation that filmmaking could be fun and rewarding.